line up, you know, like I didn't intend for, there's so much stuff I don't intend to happen, and then it just happens. And people look at me like, knowing I'm a big brain, knowing I'm a big heart, being like, oh, you meant this to happen. You are, you know, you've been synergizing this into existence or something. And I'm just like, honestly, no. More than anything, what I do is the same thing every day, as much as possible, just for my own sanity. And that's about it. Whether or not I'm employed, it's very much like, you gotta wake up before 8. You gotta be going to bed before 2. I need that, personally. I need to be in, like, living with the seasons, you know? So it changes, and that's what's so delightful, is this relationship with the sun. And I think I started intentionally developing it the first time I learned, you know, in 9th grade in my earth science class, the first time I learned that the climate change catastrophe. Like, I watched the Al Gore documentary, and my teacher was very stridently showing it to us, clearly against some public opinion pushback. But she was very just such a strong scientist, and she taught with strength, and I adored her so much. God, yeah. No, I was thinking about the PE teacher in elementary school and how I said I admired her so much. The thing I really admired about her is that she, like, I could tell every time she became frustrated teaching me about, like, throwing the ball or hitting the ball, she wasn't frustrated with me. It was very, very clear to me, and it was the first adult in my life who was, like, very clearly not, you know, outside of, like, my mom and a couple of my immediate family members, or most of my immediate family, come on. Outside of that, it was like the first adult in the, like, outside world who was a stranger and had no reason to know me or my story, but who still was clearly frustrated with whatever mysterious circumstances led me to be so anxious in this throw the ball, hit the ball relationship, right? Like, and I had just, you know, it was very childhood stuff. It was like being teased by the boy gang for being different because I was a girl, right? And it was very normal tomboy experiences at the time. But I could feel her, like, just vague frustration was never at me. That was revelatory. She was, like, never mad at me. She was always mad at whatever circumstances or conditions or things that she knew she didn't know, but that she knew existed, that had shaped this anxiety, this performance anxiety when it came to sports. And there was a lot of other stuff that went into it too. I had this really cool, but very high-key babysitter as like really young, but she was also kind of like a day camp lady, and I ended up going to her day camp when I got older. And the day camp was like volleyball and running track around the border of her property, and roller hockey and all of this wild stuff. This woman was so cool. And it was mostly boys in her day camp. She was like, the girls usually can't keep up. I remember there being like this entire discussion surrounding whether or not me as a girl would be like fitting in well enough in this sporty high-key environment in order to, like, not hold the boys back, right? We can't be holding any of the boys back. We can't be showing them our shoulders. There's, you know, no, like, fingertip length only, ladies. Otherwise, go home. Wear an Oops shirt, which is one of my favorite ones. Bright green shirt that said Oops in black across it. And you had to wear it in middle school, and it was just this gigantic thing, and you had to wear it if your outfit was like too sexy. And it's so funny to me, right? Because in my middle school, also, I couldn't take the oop shirt people seriously because in parallel to that, at the same time, we had a teacher who got arrested for taking pictures of the boys in a variety of ways that were super not okay for an adult, and definitely a teacher, definitely somebody in a position of power, in a position of trust. So, that was going on, and that was actually my first exposure to protests. I had this friend Katie who I just kind of liked, and she was like up in arms in defense of this teacher. She was like, he is so like not the pedophile that they're saying that he is. Like, this is slander, this is wrong, this is lies. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is me being introduced to the subject. I was like, hell yeah, girl, rise up. Feminism for real, though. And she was like, yeah, we're getting shirts. You want to go make shirts with me? And I was like, fuck yeah, I want to do arts and crafts. So we went and made shirts. And it was just like free, and then the teacher's name, free him. And we marched, and it was like this gang of girls, and it was like kind of a powerful thing. Suddenly I could feel the way that me as a middle schooler and all of us as middle schoolers were shaping the political environment at the administrative level, and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. But he actually was a pedophile that was building very inappropriate relationships with the boys in his care and exploiting them. And I was horrified. That day, it was within one day, I went from marching to learning the truth and just absolute self-disgust. It was quite the ride. And this at the same middle school that made us all become numbers for a unit or for a semester while we learned about the Holocaust, right? So like very impressionable time for me. But yeah, so growing up, teachers are pedophiles, and just being horrified and being like, oh my god, this guy was doing that to like my bros, like, and he was one of my science teachers. I don't really remember his science class like at all, because all of this obviously overshadows anything I learned there. The only other memory I have in that science class was this boy, like I had gotten up to get a beaker or something because I do remember learning about meniscuses in this class. Oof. But yeah, we were like getting beakers for something, and this boy who like I thought we were on pretty good like camaraderie, sort of like in the know, quiet, on the DL, like understanding, never talked to each other but kind of got each other sort of place in the world. That's where I thought we were. So I didn't expect for him to turn to me and with a lot of like hateful viciousness call me a bitch. I was like, what the fuck? I was just blown away. And I got my beaker and I sat down, and my whole world was completely different. And that's the first memory that rose up in me after I got over my ego about supporting a pedophile unknowingly, and how awful that made me feel, especially in such a real world context when I'm learning about all of these different things and trying to figure out how to be a person that wants to move freely in the world, even with the impediment of being born a girl. Like that was and still is a tender situationship, especially because of the amount of pedophiles it turns out I knew, and that I learned about later, or that I started realizing at the time after it was shown to me when they arrested this man for like exploiting children once they did that. And I was like, oh, that's not okay. And I received an example of how not okay that was. I started realizing that my friend's grandpa was kind of a freak for like always wanting to hold me on his lap, you know, or this and that. And these things started connecting. So yeah, I really do. We gotta talk about rape culture. And we gotta talk about the weaponization of homoeroticism and sophism, which is even harder because like most people can't even discuss what Sapphic is without trying to figure out like how they both simultaneously want to love and fuck in a Sapphic way. And it's like, oof, that's some rough stuff about where we are as a country when it comes to our relationship with sex. We gotta talk about this. Sex work is like the wound, the social wound right now of everything, like the level of exploitability possible in that line of work is unacceptable. But it's the obvious like symptom, right, of the disease. And the disease is this generational trauma and the passing on of hurt through child sexual abuse. That includes the sexualization of minors. That includes wanting to normalize being a minor attracted person or a MAP. Wow, I hated learning that acronym. That's actually what started my problem with acronyms. Wasn't having a problem with acronyms until they made it pedophilic. Suddenly, this topic has a whole new dimension of weight and heft that is also so taboo that I cannot even acknowledge that weight and heft to myself, right? What do you think it means that the free software movement is so tainted? Just by association. And how could it not have been designed this way? To some extent, with some level of malicious intent. Or protective. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that darknet split because I know I mentioned it the other night and I'm like, great, now I have to elaborate. Because like I can't just be like, yeah, back in 2000, what was it, 10, 9, 8, 7, 8, I think. I had only just begun to like click around on the Onion net, and really I was so nervous because the way, like the breadcrumbs I'd followed to get there had given warnings about certain areas or levels of the world I never wanted to be a part of. I was like, yeah, nope. Underground trade in anything black market, not interested. But definitely not children, and that was one of them. It's simply a deep skeleton in humanity's closet that got revealed really in a wow way we could no longer ignore in sort of a collective fashion, and so blame had to be associated and appropriated, but it was everywhere. It was all of this complicit, never mentioning it, teaching one another shame, realizing how it shaped us only too late, grieving too long to do anything useful. And the problem persists. Although I am a huge fan of the revolutions against that, right? Like I mentioned before, there's a sexual revolution going on that is unfucking paralleled when it comes to divesting oneself of shame and really healing and coming fully back into embodiment. It's amazing. And it's possible for everyone. Like in a pretty rapid way, I think, too. I'm calling on, my country whose laws I'm subjected to, because it's the system of decision-making, policy-making processes that I'm the most familiar with, having lived within it, grown up in it. And I'm calling on this rapid policy legislation making to protect certain things, such as net neutrality and sex worker rights. And I'm doing that as like an open plea for all of us to make room for that level of healing for ourselves and for each other. And if we have room to heal, we will have room to breathe, and then we will have room to do what we need to do to save ourselves. The people I admire most when I think about healing generational trauma, and really it's the people who have been talking about the need to heal generational trauma, and the people who have such vivid, evocative generational trauma, like coming to America packed into slave ships, or struggling in the Gulf of Mexico with the American fucking maw of violence. You want to ask or learn about generational healing, center Black and Indigenous perspectives. I don't know how to say this more clearly, but I will continue finding more ways. Sorry, I'm not perfect. Better than nothing, though, am I right? Yeah. I'm really just a literature nerd who disappointed my high school literature teacher at heart. I hate letting people down, especially people I admire. I always feel like I have to come back, 70 times 7 or something like that. I learned this idea of cherry picking religions really young, and I remember I was learning it along with a lot of other people. And there's just a certain assumed amount of disdain for that type of behavior, right? Like, it's such highway robbery, or kind of piracy. And at that same time, I was learning about, actual online piracy, right? Like torrenting. I think it was like LimeWire, right? This is for me, right? This is around that time. But there were just so many interesting arguments surrounding the concept while everybody felt safe hashing these arguments out loud with each other. And one of them was the one that swayed me, because I was watching them, and I've always been like really priding myself on being a good girl, but who also like is a good girl on purpose, right? Like I'm very moral and ethical, but like according to my own values and beliefs, and like how I think people should be in the world and like moving through the world. And that can be really abrasive, so I've learned how to like convey it in a way that is hopefully more or less abrasive. I don't know what she's talking about, but she got me started on the like cherry picking religion thing, because oh my god, am just now reading about Rastafarianism, which combines Protestant Christianity, mysticism, and a pan-African political consciousness. That is powerful. That's global. That's cool.
Alright, start it over here.
Basically, but at the end of the day, it can't be anything other than what I am. Yeah, but this concept of like piracy, oh yeah, the argument that swayed me was about copies. And I encourage you to go look it up, because I don't fucking remember it, but it really worked. It was a good one. I think it still holds true. Although I did have to add an addendum to the copies argument later on when I learned about carbon emission and the relationship with like megastructures, like Amazon, like Oz storage and such. So things like that. Yeah.
It was the copying, not stealing argument.
I had to start putting like a limiter on it, just because we became, like, we literally just got to that capacity. And the more I learned about the world, the more I learned about technology in the world,
which
I learned about history.
The copying, not stealing argument really has some serious roots, or I should say, universal basic income would have a serious impact on changing our definitions surrounding copying versus stealing. Because at the end of the day, that comes down to whether or not somebody can make a living from what they're doing, right? And the threat of starvation and hunger and homelessness and mental health disorders and pain and suffering and true human experiences for the artist, for the creator, that threat has to necessarily change your definition from copying versus stealing, and in a societal way too. There are pragmatic and obvious, probably, I assume, because there almost always is, pragmatic and obvious ways to determine at what level something becomes stolen versus copied. And I think we all just intuitively can understand what that is based on the vibe in the room as a group, as a community, as a social group. But I don't think that vibe is fair without a guaranteed standard of living for all people. Like at this point, with our technology, with our wealth as a species on this planet, it just doesn't seem appropriate.
And the more I read sci-fi and fantasy and all of these things, the more I loved, right? Like the more I traveled and met people and kind of fell in love with everybody. became certain that we were finally in a place where our world can be considered a spaceship that we inhabit. Like, it's a closed system spaceship. And before, you know, I guess before the Industrial Revolution, but it could even be as far back as, you know, cooking. And I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson has a better concept of the calendar of the universe than I do, so maybe he could weigh in on this. But he really does. God, that was so cool. That was such a good documentary. But where was I going? Oh yeah, I think before it was either cooking or more recently Industrial Revolution, possibly fireworks, China. Thanks for that one. Gunpowder, whoops. Wow, what a huge technological foobar to see somebody using such a powerful tool of war for pleasure. How dare China love fireworks more than guns, more than the idea of guns, right? Oh my God. But wow, like, that got stolen and capitalized upon so fucking fast. Wow. And it just, it covered the world, right? It just like, phew, suddenly gunpowder, treason and plot, it was everywhere. And so you've got all this stuff going on, but it's so funny because it's really just compressed flour. Like, it wasn't just China. There was, I think, France also. Sorry, anyway. Yeah, somebody started fighting me in my head about the technical evolution of... Look, this all started when I fell in love with a book called Books, Banks, and Buttons, but I didn't even read that book, okay? It was just the idea that the book existed, and then it took off. So my facts are often wrong, but my heart is in the right place. Anyway, yeah, this question of like, should we use it for war, should we use it for pleasure, and then really looking around in my world and seeing that we've gotten to the capacity where you could consider us inhabitants on a spaceship, and that spaceship is Earth, and the biosphere on it is related to the sun, obviously. Gosh, I'm not going down that path right now, but celestial bodies, man, they have a whole different kind of weight, a whole different type of density, a whole different feel in the world once you start getting a feel for physics at the celestial bodies level, just like a familiarity with it, right? Like, you just immerse yourself in the media to some extent in some way, and you just believe that that's like the underpinning science is sound. And you believe that because you think about all the things that you do know about the world that the author, the writer, whoever is presenting you with, that you're like, oh yeah, that stuff I know to be true, so that gives me confidence that they did good research on the areas of subject that in which I am an expert, or more of an expert, and then you can kind of like grow in trust of the source, right? Anywho, I know, where is my howdy shirt? This is the demon shirt. We have to season the demon shirt because it's going to be the Yule shirt, quite obviously. I hope that is obvious to all my witches out there. I really have been waxing spiritual lately, just incredibly so. It's been necessary. So this question of should we use our technology for war or for pleasure or for both? Like, how do we be more measured as a species who now inhabits the planet in a level of like, you could consider this a spaceship? Oh yeah, and I guess what I mean by that, and this is why I brought up Neil deGrasse Tyson in the first place, was that, where was that? Gosh, golly. Oh, our technological advancements bring us to new size as far as like impact in our environment goes, right? And so our advancement in learning to cook changed our impact on the environment in a significant way. And so you could measure our technological achievements by the impact on the environment and then decide, find the cutoff point, where's the decision rule, but then decide at which point the impact on their environment was equal, like the even ratio, right? Like 50-50 tool environmental impact, something like that. Within its ecological niche as a species, and like, whoa, what a math problem. I don't know. Probably somebody's done it. I hope somebody's done it. I have so much faith in the scientists. Like, oh my God, they're doing such cool work. Every new thing I learn about this world, I'm just like, amazing. And that's one of the arguments in theology that I love the most, is that your concept of God should not be so small it can't encompass the wonder of the universe. And that is so true. If God is real, they would be so much bigger than the information that we can currently discern about our surroundings with our perceptions. This whole question of subjective versus objective, is God real? Is there a first mover? This is such an intelligent design. It's hard not to believe, the watch argument is such a good one, where you come across a constructed piece of clockwork in the woods and instinctively this was made by something. That is a scientist trying to convey their wonder at the way that the universe fits together. So is the golden ratio. That's a mathematician trying to convey that same wonder at the way they see the universe fitting together the more they explore it. That was Galileo, that was Copernicus, that were all of these scientists who were like, oh my God, I see how big God would have to be. And they wanted that shared. That's why the book Galileo's Daughter is so cool, because he wrote to his daughter who lived in a nunnery, and she got to just hold on to that wonder in a place of spiritual sanctity and safety. That's the important part of spirituality and religion. It protects, it insulates, it saves wonder and awe. It sets it aside for something bigger than ourselves and says, this is bigger than us. We can feel it together, collectively. That's why speaking in tongues is such a deeply passionate and intense type of worship. And there are many forms of worship in the world. I don't think any of them need be disdained, because we are worshiping that same mystery together, that awe in something larger than ourselves. And my favorite ones are all of the pragmatic, semi-agnostic, or even purely atheist people who go, the thing that's bigger than me is this world and my people in it. And they mean every person. They just mean everybody. Those people are the ones I look up to. I do tend to deify them a little bit, because I think that level of applied philosophy is divine. I think that is what revelation and reason are constantly passing back and forth between each other, is that desire to apply philosophy appropriately to build better lives and better worlds. I had to get kind of religious today because I just deleted the morning prayers video. There always has to be, something religious in there, like true faith. It can't be compelled. And it has to be shared. That's the purpose of all missionaries. That's what functions in a mechanistic sense beneath Alcoholics Anonymous. This faith in something larger than yourself. It doesn't matter what, just something. Will propel you not only in self-actualization and self-fulfillment, but also in altruism and care and the support of those around you in their self-fulfillment and their self-actualization. And it breaks my heart in this window of vision and healing that I'm being gifted with, really, to see how many people really just need to be told it's okay to care about themselves. It's like most of us. That's too damn high. But hell yeah, I am here to spread the word, my bird. It is 10:15 a.m. on a Saturday. I was invited to participate in a social activity that I no longer want to do, which I know is a deeply relatable experience. However, I hate passing up these social activities, and what I would rather do is go be nonverbal with this person sometime, in the next couple weeks. I would rather not do the big social thing and do this smaller social thing instead, and I hope that they're okay with that. I think they will be. So I think it's okay if I pass on the social activity tonight, but I did want to go, and I thought it would be fun to meet everyone else. I just am exhausted, and I want to not talk anymore outside of the talking I'm doing here, because it's a lot, and it should be a lot. So, yeah, what else do I have to say about rape culture and pedophiles and systemic justification and financing of child sexual abuse and the ways it's perpetuated by being under-explored and under-discussed and under-prepared for on the interpersonal level, and the way that we taboo it in society, but also in a more global, as a species living on a spaceship level, the way that this rape culture is harming our entire world. The 2B movement, oh my god. So we have to address it wholesale, And I am proposing, once again, that we do it through the intentional and direct attention towards the free software movement and open source and free software protections, legal, binding, I would even argue constitutional at this point after seeing the level to which it has been exploited, but I am also somewhat cautious in making that high of an appeal. Fucking policy and legislation surrounding the protection of human rights in digital environments, both the right to anonymity and the right to privacy and the right to our data. And that needs to be more explicit, and it needs to be opt-in to sharing data, not opt-out to sharing data as a fucking default. Are you kidding me? Same with voting. Oh my God. No pop-ups, no ads. All of this this ocean of trash that you see online is simply a metaphor for the oceans on our spaceship that are choking to death. They are the same thing. They are the same thing. When you, in your soundscape, swim through the ball pit that is the comfort of TikTok and all of the plastic, you normalize overconsumption of plastic. I know it's really fun. The level of micro relationships that can be experienced on TikTok are amazing. I'm just saying it doesn't need to be a ball pit full of plastic. Like, TikTok is doing some cool tendril, Tendril, tendril style, cognitive, touching, teasing, loving, and it's amazing. To reach out at that microbial of a level with your attention, to have that fine point on your attention and be connecting and communicating with one another at that level is fucking phenomenal. It's amazing. It's still full of plastic. And like, to be fair, some plastic is fun. And I don't mean to harp on TikTok either. I think that TikTok is honestly, by and large, way amazing and better than Meta. Just for the record, just to make sure that that is clear. I realize that not everybody is privy to my the level of explicitness I can get on my values, which means I can get so nuanced on all of these different topics, but I do understand that that is not always easy to intuit or grasp from the first few exposures to me and my channel, myself, my platform, my personhood. So that's fair. But basically, just trying to talk to other giants about giant-like problems. If you feel yourself to be a giant in spirit, in heart, in mind, let's collab. This can be not Attack on Titan. It can be Atlantis to an extent, where all the big giant mechanic things get filled with the shiny blue magic light and protect Atlantis before it goes under. We can do that in a psychic, cognitive sort of way as a group of people, as a community, and we can do it around the whole world. when it comes to like values, beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes. But it does take everyone doing it inside first. I always think, I'm always reminded of that Chinese structure of family and self within the larger like context of your duty to your neighborhood, your community, your state, your government, your people, and then the gods, you know. And there's this like very obvious ripple motion coming from the person and outwards, and then that always makes me think of the butterfly effect and chaos theory, and I really feel everyone has these associations. Like, I just don't think I'm that special. I think I'm actually pretty average as a person, in as far as like things that I've experienced in the world. I think the exceptionality part is my level of verbality or whatever, where I can verbalize stuff, but like otherwise I think I've been exposed to like relatively the same things as like the average American person, and I mean like in a within the context of my privileged positionality, the average American white girl, like not quite white trash, not quite middle class, somewhere in between, something like that, and just like it's just such a broad group, I guess, that I categorize myself into, and I know that can be troublesome, but there's so many like different identities that I relate to and empathize with, and I hate restricting empathy or relational like sensations. I love feeling solidarity with so many different groups. I love feeling like, yeah, this is fucked up, and I really believe that that's fucked up, and so I'm gonna do something my way about it. I'm gonna do something that I think will help, but whatever it is, I'm gonna, you know, just be committed to that. And I've always been that way, and so I just have this really great trust relationship with myself on the topic. It's still like scary, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to like, do I trust me more than everybody around me to know me best and to like know what's best for me? And if that answer is no, that's like a problem, right? Like, that's not good. You have to trust yourself more than you trust anyone around you to know what's best for you. And that's a protective, you know, quality for people, individuals to have. It's important. I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of those experiments they did where they removed the myelin layer on nerves on some animals, dogs, I think, puppies, and maybe, I don't know, this sounds really unethical, right? But it like pretty much resulted in constant seizures. The myelin in the neurons on dogs, I think. That sounds like something I would have learned recently, and you would think it would be more vivid of a knowledge nugget. But oh well, yeah, I'm just a gold panner from Colorado, you know, just out here cowpoking along. But anyway, the fucking, where was I? Gotta stop building metaphor just because I can. It's so pretty though. It's hard. It's really hard. I know I should be writing. I should be trying to write more. Like, where's your little, like, you know, sci-fi story that you keep in your back pocket? Where's the file drawer cozy? I don't have a fucking file drawer. I trashed my original operating system so badly that I had to throw out the disk, like, and it was a solid state. I lost every last bit of data that I had prior to this July. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe. I don't know. Anywho, where's I going with that? Jesus Christ. removed the myelin layer on nerves, on like that, and just like it's just such a broad group, I guess, that I categorize myself into, and I know that can be troublesome, but there's so many like different identities that I relate to and empathize with, and I hate restricting empathy or relational like sensations. I love feeling solidarity with so many different groups. I love feeling like, yeah, this is fucked up, and I really believe that that's fucked up, and so I'm gonna do something my way about it. I'm gonna do something that I think will help, but whatever it is, I'm gonna, just be committed to that. And I've always been that way, and so I just have this really great trust relationship with myself on the topic. It's still like scary, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to like, do I trust me more than everybody around me to know me best and to like know what's best for me? And if that answer is no, that's like a problem, right? Like, that's not good. You have to trust yourself more than you trust anyone around you to know what's best for you. And that's a protective, quality for people, individuals to have. It's important. I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of those experiments they did where they removed the myelin layer.
I don't know why I brought that up, the myelin layer. I guess it's really just about feeling that alive. I don't know.
For you.
Oh, no. The myelin layer is the protective layer of being the one who decides what's best for you. And that's what you're meant to help build in children, is critical thinking skills, empathy, self-trust, relationships with themselves and others that are built on trust and respect and care. So removing that protective layer has this effect. The same effect I'm saying. I'm making a likening to, a synonymousness observation with removing the myelin layer from neurons or from cells, which results in a lot of different types of varyingly horrific physical experiences. In a cognitive, psychological, spiritual, emotional sense, removing that trust relationship or practicing self-abandonment. the behavior of self-abandonment. Is synonymous with removing the myelin layer. It's such a protective and important part of development, is that relationship with self and the trust relationship you help your children build in themselves. Undermining them, neglecting them, demeaning them or their interests, their concerns, their cares, or worse, exploiting and abusing them, emotionally abusing them, physically abusing them, punishing them. None of that style of parenting is actually productive in the first place, and what you teach them is how to not be secure and stable adults. Well-grounded, well-rounded. You know, all these high-key ideals. And good parents are going to hear all that, and they're going to think about all the ways in which they aren't a good enough parent. Unfortunately, we have this habit of self-flagellation in our country. It's truly absurd. I blame the Puritans, I really do. At least they can't hang me in the town square now for doing that kind of blaming. Kind of rising up in the world as a witch, you know? Slowly but surely, we're getting there. But yeah, generally, I really need to make it clear that I'm talking about populations of people. Big groups. The trends, the norms, the averages. For us as a country. The statistics that I do know. The general understanding that I have that I'm capturing from pop culture. I'm not talking about you. But the way you hear me is something to reflect with. And you know, probably I'm a piece of shit or whatever, and it's me that's wrong, right? Like, I'm just a person. I'm definitely gonna be wrong. Like I said, I'm a fairly average person with a serious grudge against child sexual abuse. Like, that's pretty much it. And I'm here to talk about that in the way it shows up in our culture and root causes and solutions. I truly think that framing mental health as a public health concern and approaching it with social and political solutions would be revelatory. I think universal basic income would relieve so much depression and anxiety. You would see a rebounding in the population of creativity, of productivity, of labor. Like, unfortunately, this distance between the ideal version, the utopia, and the current, the actual, feels so cognitively overwhelming and so impossible to figure out how to get from point A to B. And it's because you just want B. You don't want A at all. You don't want dystopia. You don't want children dying. You don't want unequal distribution of like anything. You want it all to just be fair so you can live your life, because no average person really wants anyone else to suffer for their own sake, you know? And so that's the evil of resource false scarcity. It's false scarcity. It's not even real. It's absurd. It's insane. But at this point, mental health feels like a gaslight also, like, to some extent. Gosh, whatever point in the journey you are, words can come across in ways they aren't meant. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I don't think that staying silent is the right choice either. I'm just hoping, I'm trusting listeners to make up their own minds and to have their own thoughts and opinions and to do what they think is right. In every moment, in every day, better is better. That's a new one, I like it. It's from my yeah, we gotta work through this together as a community, as a team. This is not an isolated issue of evildoers far from home. These are things that happen in the home. I talked about in this episode my middle school science teacher, but I could have also spoken about that very same middle school social science teacher who I found out many years later was in a full-on relationship with one of his students, him being, some 50-year-old man and her being some 13-year-old girl. They were dating. His wife found out by looking at his phone and seeing the texts, and oh my god, what the hell? You want to talk about groomers, and I'm not saying go persecute teachers. This is not a fucking witch hunt. I like teachers. I like good teachers. I like good instructors. I like good coaches. I like good people who can convey information accurately and well to the listener, like in a useful way, so that the listener can do useful things and be empowered to do useful things with those tools. I admire all of that, and I'm here for it, and hopefully I'm pretty positive. That's really very obvious, and I'm glad. And this is very much not a witch hunt. I'm a witch, don't like witch hunts. Hate that. Do not like the pitchfork and torch bearing ideals. They're not useful. You can't burn out these kinds of problems. If you could, we would have done it by now. Grow up. This takes talking, it takes sex-positive movements, it takes radical change. I'm not going to Bernie Sanders you on the whole sex worker protections, but that's such an obvious confluence for the labor movement and sex positivity movement to really gang up together, and I'm shocked it is taking so long. It can only be internalized bias and generational trauma and a history of child sexual exploitation, especially in poor communities. God, poor whites. Like, literally poor white people, I feel, are associated the most with this particular affliction. Some of that's media, some of that's reality, some of it's statistics, but what a large group of people to be prevented from allyship with really important topics by the specter of child sexual abuse, huh? Almost like how all the gays got froze at the mere threat of being likened to the pedos so quickly after their rights were protected and upheld. Alright, we'll let you in. But you still gotta sleep on the floor. I mean, yeah, I guess I do use dog metaphors a lot. I like dogs. They're good. Dogs are good. They are just so truly so good-hearted.
I still hold a grudge against the misinformation campaign surrounding pit bulls. Yeah, that was really fucked up. Pit bulls were great nannies. The core philosophy of the dog is dogs aren't born vicious. People make them vicious. We domesticated this wolf. The feral wolf, the vicious wolf. We did domesticate it into an entirely new breed. And now, any viciousness in dogs is a direct result of that dog's experience with people. That's a powerful metaphor, or allegory, or whatever meaning you're hoping to find in my words. It's all definitely in there. People are good. Dogs are good. People do good things. When free to choose, they'll make the right choice. When their children aren't being directly threatened with, literal gulag, then they are okay. They're fine. They can be fine. We collectively cannot afford to continue thinking that punishment is an effective form of training behavior. None of us can afford to think that on a personal level, and we can't afford to see it show up in our policies on a global socio-political level. I think, much like the milkman likes to say, it is time to take a walk. Hug your loved ones. Tell the sunshine you see it. Smell the wind. And keep an eye out for all those weeds that grow up through cracks.